my name is Robert Yeager. I'm in my 6th year as commander of the Millis American Legion Post 208. And those of you who are real old timers might have noticed that we don't march as far as we used to, and hopefully the whole proceedings won't be as long as they used to be. I had to thank you on that. As you all know, this is to commemorate the, not commemorate is the correct word, I guess, but to honor those who have died, military members who have died in combat. All of us in the Millis American Legion are war veterans. You have to be a war veteran to belong to the American Legion. Of course, none of us are dead, so that kind of sets a different parameter. I'm going to turn the platform over to my senior vice commander, Lawrence McCarter, and he'll have the program flow, and I'll interject from time to time. Thank you all for coming, and we do appreciate it.
As the commander had mentioned, 6 terms as commander, and I had done 5 terms, so I'm the runner-up on that. He's the new champion. I'd like to welcome all the members of the town of Millis and all our friends and veterans, police, fire, Millis High School to the ceremonies for 2013. First of all, I would like to call upon Jeff Mushnick to offer a prayer.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the armed forces, Millis town officials, all parade participants, and everyone who came out today to honor our deceased veterans both locally and worldwide. I was called yesterday as a replacement to Alan Birch, who's under the weather. We all hope and pray for a swift recovery and that he's in good shape. Memorial Day, they asked me to do ecumenical, so we'll do that. Memorial Day is our day to remember and quietly thank the veterans who gave the last full measure of devotion, who gave the government that proverbial blank check that was in fact cashed with their life. Those who felt strongly enough to go wherever and whenever needed to protect our freedoms, wherever they were called to, and did not return. Please take a moment and bow our heads for a moment of silence, a prayer of those who have gone before us. Thank you. While we honor these veterans who have passed on that I just mentioned, you may not know, or you may know, that each and every day we are losing veterans from all wars, whether it's due to age or illness. One illness that does not get nearly enough attention is veteran suicide. Please, I beg you, if you know a veteran that is in need of services, assistance, or help, call 988 and press 1 to speak to an operator. This is the answer 24/7, and there's a free service available to help stop the crisis we're facing in this country. According to the VA, we're losing between 16 and 22 veterans per day to suicide. Some warning potential signs are appearing sad or depressed, hopelessness, rage or anger, risky behavior, drawing up a will, giving away prized possessions, showing violent behavior like punching a hole in the wall or getting into fights. If we can do our part to help stop this, there will be less veterans to have in our memory every year and more happy lives with families for many years to come. Veterans that you'll still be able to have a cup of coffee with, sit down and have a great chat. And remember, if you see a veteran today or any day, please thank them for these services. Thank you.
At this point, I would like to have a playing of the national anthem by the Millis High School Band. Could all rise? Present arms. The start of Memorial Day was originated with General Logan's orders on behalf of the Grand Army of the Republic, which basically was a predecessor to the American Legion, and was comprised primarily of veterans of the Civil War. So I thought I would at least mention that. I've had a few things on my mind, so I apologize for not printing out the copy, and I don't have it memorized, but one of the things on my mind is my own father, a World War II veteran, died on May 12th. It was David McCarter, who was a World War II veteran of the Asiatic Pacific Theater, serving mostly on minesweepers and destroyers. And he was there for the occupation of Japan, and was also suffering some from exposure to radiation during a visit to Hiroshima, and also served during the Korean War. At this point, I would like to proceed on and call to Erin Underfield, a member of the Millis Board of Selectmen, to read a proclamation from the Millis Board of Selectmen.
Whereas Memorial Day, originally called Decoration Day, is a day of remembrance for those who have died in service of the United States of America. Over 24 cities and towns claim to be the birthplace of Memorial Day. While Waterloo, New York was officially declared the birthplace of Memorial Day by President Lyndon Johnson in May 1966, it's difficult to prove conclusively the origins of the day. Whereas, regardless of the exact date or location of its origins, one thing is clear. Memorial Day was born out of the Civil War in a desire to honor our dead. It was officially proclaimed on the 5th of May, 1868, by General John Logan, National Commander of the Grand Army of the Republic, in his General Order Number 11. The 30th day of May, 1868, is designated for the purpose of strewing with flowers or otherwise decorating the graves of comrades who died in defense of their country during the late rebellion, and whose bodies now lie in almost every city and hamlet, churchyard in the land, he proclaimed. The date of Decoration Day, as he called it, was chosen because it wasn't the anniversary of any particular battle. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Millis Select Board do hereby proclaim Monday, the 29th day of May, 2023, as Memorial Day in the town of Millis, and urge all citizens of this community to join us in support of Memorial Day. Respectfully, the Millis Select Board.
At this point, the Millis High School band will play Battle Hymn of the Republic. At this point, I'd like to introduce Patricia Poff, a member of American Legion Post 208, and also was a Staff Sergeant in the United States Army.
A sergeant, not a staff sergeant. I'll make sure we get that right. You promoted me. I appreciate that. I like getting promoted. That's great. Abraham, we'll go down a little bit lower here. Abraham Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address on 19 November of 1863. 7 years ago, our forefathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation is so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who gave their lives and that the nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a large sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, and we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggle and have consecrated it, it is far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we said here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work in which they have fought here to have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be dedicated to the great task remaining before us. That from these honored dead we increase our devotion in that cause for which they gave their full level of devotion, and that we are highly resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain. That nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government for the people, by the people, and of the people shall not perish from the earth. Thank you.
Call upon James T. Waters, member of Post 208, to read in Flanders Field. As I'd indicated before, this is somewhat my fault. I told him I'd provide him the text and had a lot of things on my mind, so I guess I will confess to having missed the boat. If it caused anyone else any embarrassment, I'll apologize for that ahead of time. Not something I've ever forgotten before.
No embarrassment, Larry. God bless everybody for showing up. Thank you. Thanks all the veterans, everybody that gave their lives. We appreciate it. Thanks again.
I don't usually forget anything, but I guess I'm not perfect. At this point, I would like to call upon the Millis High School Band to play America the Beautiful. Each year, as I'm sure you know, we also have a Grand Marshal for the parade. And the Grand Marshal this year is Edward Shropshire, member of Post 208, a World War II veteran of the United States Coast Guard. He is also going to be the bell ringer on a later thing, so as usual, he's still picking up some of his original duties. And at this point, we rely more and more on those of us that still remain. And as we get older, and unfortunately, the World War II, the Korean, and the Vietnam vets, none of us are youngsters. And we need some of you younger veterans, people from the Persian Gulf War and more recent wars, to pick up the torch and carry it on for us. We're more than welcome. And I may add that every Thursday morning, there's a coffee for veterans at the American Legion Post. And that's every Thursday all year. And anybody that's an armed forces veteran is welcome to attend. It's entirely social, but that doesn't mean we won't give you a recruiting pitch. At this point, it's my pleasure to present our featured speaker, who is Brutus A. Cantaraggi, so many of you may know, and he's apparently the moderator for the town of Millis, works for the town of Franklin. He was a captain in the United States Army and was a member of both the 2nd and the 7th Air Cavalry of the 77th Infantry Division. Hi, Captain.
Thank you. As stated, I'm Robert Brutus Cantaraggi. I was asked to speak today as a veteran. I joined the Massachusetts National Guard, Bravo Company 104, out of Agawam, Mass., the old Yankee Division, when I was 17 years old. 17 years young, actually. As I was not 18 years of age, my parents had to sign a waiver so I could join. My father, Robert Cantaraggi, was drafted during the Korean War, and my grandfather, Pasquale Ambrosia Cantaraggi, served during World War II. And my mother, being a mother, was afraid and not happy with my choice. I can tell you, I know I didn't join the Army to get a job. I think I was hoping for travel, adventures, experiences, and to help pay for my college. Or maybe it was a calling. I spent the summer of 1983 between my junior and senior year in high school, where I attended Westfield High. And I went to basic training, infantry school at Fort Benning, Georgia, also known as Fort Moore now. I can tell you about those days, try to paint a picture. 1983 was in less than 10 years after the ending of Vietnam. My instructors down there were all Vietnam veterans. It was very hands-on. I talked to people who have gone through the school lately, and it's a little different. But back then, it was a little more hands-on. I can tell you, though, after attending bayonet training at Fort Benning, Georgia, going back to high school and playing football was very easy. Just leave it at that. I returned to Fort Benning after graduation from high school to complete my training. I loved the infantry and serving in the Massachusetts National Guard. During college, I participated in the Army ROTC program at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. I was ultimately commissioned as an officer and served on active duty. After training, I served as 2nd of the 9th Cavalry, 7th Infantry Division in Fort Ord. I left the Army as a captain, serving 10 years on both the Army active duty and reserves in Massachusetts National Guard. I can honestly say that joining the Army was one of the best decisions of my life. I stated earlier my thoughts for joining, signing up. The Army was a vehicle for travel. I lived, when I say lived, more than 3 months in Georgia, North Carolina, Alabama, Kentucky, Texas, and California. I was able to meet and interact not only with fellow soldiers, but also experience the different cultures, values, and politics found throughout our country. I was able to do some really cool stuff. Fired all different weapons from 45, 9mm, AR-15, grenade launchers, 50 cals, Mark 19, Law Dragon launchers, tow missile systems, and even got to put some depleted uranium shells down the barrel of an Abrams tank. I was taught how to find my way anywhere using the terrain, a compass, and common sense. I roped out of helicopters and jumped out of the doors of perfectly good aircraft. I learned how to triage a patient, safely use a tourniquet, and stop a sucking chest wound if needed. When I stayed early, I'd not joined the Army to get a job. In reality, it did not work out that way. The military did help me find employment in indirect but significant ways. The skills I learned while serving, whether in leadership, organization, communication, problem solving, perseverance, self-awareness, expectations, training, and personal relationships have given me the attributes to excel in my chosen profession. The military also provided me with some of the best and longest lasting friendships in my life. And it did help with schooling. I graduated from college with no student loans. When I was invited to speak today, I was asked what topics I talk about. It was suggested I talk about myself and my career for like 10 to 12 minutes. I just give you about 2 or 3 minutes, and I think that's about enough. We are here today to observe Memorial Day, to honor and remember the brave men and women who died while serving the United States Armed Forces. This is a day to pay tribute to their sacrifice and express gratitude for their service to our country and the wonderful way of life that we enjoyed here in the United States of America. I want to start with and take a couple of moments to talk about the history of Memorial Day. Selectman Underhill kind of took some of that from me already, but in case you did not know, Memorial Day originated in the aftermath of the Civil War. It was literally known, as stated earlier, Decoration Day. It observed on both sides of the Mason-Dixon line at various states and town events. It became a federal holiday in 1971, is now observed on the last Monday in May to honor those who have died while serving the United States Armed Forces. Late May was selected because all across America, flowers would be in bloom, loved ones to choose the best flowers to lay in the graves of fallen soldiers, sailors, and Marines. And I was looking up some statistics. During the Civil War, both sides lost 1.1 million people, either through on the battlefield or through disease. And the population of the United States at that time was about 31 million. So that's about 1 in 10 people died during the Civil War on both sides. So you look around you, 10% of us wouldn't be here right now. This is very significant. We are all here today to show respect to Memorial Day by visiting a war memorial and having some words. We are visiting a cemetery where the veterans are buried. Maybe some folks will place some flowers or flags in the graves of veterans, or simply take a moment in silence to honor those who have died to their country. These are all important acts that help us not forget the souls that gave our lives to our country. I'd like to share a story of a fallen hero in my life. By telling this story, it helps me remember and maybe helps his legacy live on by reminding you of the service of this veteran. His name was First Sergeant Kevin DuPont. Kevin was my first squad leader in the National Guard. I'm sorry. He taught me so much as a soldier and as a friend. I was young, like 18. He was old, 25. He was a Marine sniper for 6 years before joining the Massachusetts National Guard. He had so much experience in military and life, and I was immediately in awe of him. Kevin was one of those guys that loved life. He always had a smile on his face and a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. Some of you older folks remember the saying, smoke if you got him. Well, Kevin always got him. He always had him. He taught me so much about being a soldier. Most folks think that being a soldier is always exciting and adventurous. Sometimes it is. But for the most part, it's boring, repetitious, and painful. Kevin's upbeat personality and sense of humor was all-encompassing and contagious. No matter how much the situation sucked, Kevin's attitude made it tolerable and even fun at times. It would be so cold and so raw during some training exercise in the middle of the woods at some state forest we were at, and Kevin would come up with a joke or story to get your mind in a much happier place. I was fortunate to serve with Kevin for 4 years while attending college. Sergeant DuPont spent 26 years in the Massachusetts National Guard. A 1976 graduate of Chicopee High School. Kevin's first served in the U.S. Marine Corps, then joined the National Guard in 1984 when I graduated high school. He was an infantryman, small arms readiness training officer, and worked full-time for the Army National Guard over in Milford, Mass. When he volunteered for duty in Afghanistan in 2008, in truth, he begged to go. Kevin was 51 years old at the time. He was a little old, and the Army was really not looking forward to send 50-year-old men over to Afghanistan to fight combat. Kevin always wanted to earn the Combat Infantryman's Badge, the CIB. It was like his calling. He felt like if you had the CIB, you were a true soldier. In Afghanistan, he was a member of the 1st Brigade, 223rd Corps of Afghan National Army Embedded Training Team. The team worked with tribal leaders to identify insurgents and help train Afghan soldiers. Kevin DuPont was 52 when he died on June 17, 2009, at Brooke Army Medical Center in Texas. His death followed a 3-month medical battle to overcome severe burns, suffered to 65% of his body. He had been in combat patrol in Afghanistan on March 8, 2009, when his Humvee ran over an IEP. The driver and another soldier were also killed. In our day of observations on this Memorial Day, we honor the brave Americans who paid the highest price for their commitment to the ideals of peace, freedom, and justice. Our debt to them can be paid only by our recommitment to preserving the same ideals. That was spoken by President Ronald Reagan. In closing, I'd just like to take a moment, once again, to remember Kevin DuPont and remember the other soldiers that part of your lives that perished for our country, so we can all disagree today and all agree in our country. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. For laying of the wreath at the war memorials here, I call upon Joseph Hersey, a member of American Legion Post 208, and a former captain in the United States Air Force, and I might add, a fellow member that graduated with me in the class of 1966 from Millis High School. Present arms. Order arms. At this point, I would like to call upon the post commander, Robert Yeager, for the necrology. And he will explain to you about the toll of the bell.
As you've probably already heard, one of our own members will be chiming the bell after the naming of each Millis war veteran, member of the post or not, who has died since we last met a year ago. Bernard T. Coffey served in the Army in Korea. J. Harold Crosby also served in the Navy in Korea. Herman F. Downing, another Navy man, served in Korea. Richard L. Fortier, a Marine who also served in Korea. Constantino J. Greco, another Army member who served in Korea. Maurice C. Hotham served in the Air Force in Korea. Paul Howie served in the Army in Vietnam. Margaret E. Kearns, an Air Force veteran, served in Lebanon. Basil G. Lewis served in the Army at Vietnam. Daniel E. Lynn also served in the Army in Vietnam. David R. McCarter, another Navy World War II in the theater of Korea, as well as World War II in the South Pacific. John J. McMorrow Jr., Marine Corps, served in Vietnam. Paul D. Merritt also served in the Navy in Vietnam. James J. McDonnell served in the Air Force in Vietnam. And lastly, Gerald Wolfe served in the Navy in Vietnam. I'd ask for just a moment of silence in honor of all those Millis residents, veterans, who gave their lives eventually and served for our country. Thank you.
Have a salute to the dead, including TAPS, firing squad from members of AMVETS Post 495 and American Legion Post 208. TAPS played by Bruce Hall. All rise. Stand arms. Order, arms. At this point, I'd like to call upon Commander Robert Yeager for the dismissal.
Okay, this is the last you'll hear from me. I want to add a short footnote here that is really pertinent to this. A lot of Massachusetts residents don't know that on Cape Cod, there's an Air Force base. It was a very powerful, very important base during the Cold War and the Vietnam War. I flew as a technician on AWACS planes. We had regular picket missions over the North Atlantic. What's relevant about why we're here today, my unit, we had 3 planes crash in the North Atlantic and we lost 50 men. This during the Cold War and the Vietnam War. I'm not going to read their names, but just to sort of tie it into Massachusetts, a lot of people aren't even aware. Otis isn't a fraction of the base it used to be when I was there. After this dismissal, there will be a brief service at the veteran section of the Prospect Hill Cemetery. The public is welcome to attend. It's not as formal as this is here. Okay, as General Douglas MacArthur said at the Japanese surrender in Tokyo Bay, ending World War II, these proceedings are closed. Thank you.